In this episode of Growth Unlocked, we're joined by Ferrer. He's an exceptional leader in the go-to-market and RevOps space. We'll discuss his journey to becoming a CRO and the pathway that got him there from sales strategy at HubSpot. Channing provides actionable advice on how to leverage technology, data, and people in unison to achieve scale. He emphasizes the need for a RevOps function that can provide deep insights and drive strategy based off data-driven decisions. Channing's advice underscores the critical role of people in operational success and the importance of continuous alignment and communication. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to have Ferrer join us on the show today. Channing, thank you so much for making time for us.
Definitely, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome. Well, yeah, really looking forward to the conversation today. I might start with something that is maybe it was some insightful history for the listeners and the readers here. Keen to kind of look back on a bit of your history, but do you mind sharing some of the major milestones that led you to become a CRO at Built-In and SEMrush? And I guess what motivated you to make the move from sales operations into head of revenue?
Yeah, definitely. So when I kind of go back and look at my career, I've spent more time in sales leadership than I have in sales ops leadership. And the HubSpot was more of an anomaly actually in my career where I did just run sales strategy and ops and all these kind of surround sound teams, as we often call them at HubSpot. So my passion is really more revenue leadership. I'd say less so of this pure operational leadership. And when I first joined HubSpot, Hunter Natalie, our CSO at the time, chief sales officer, and I talked a lot about that. And what he was looking for was someone who had an operational mindset, operational skill set, but also came with very much a sales leadership viewpoint. And that was kind of the blend that I think I offered, and the reason I believe that I was able to kind of get the job at the time, and also frankly the reason I think I was very successful in the role. Because as I look back at my time at HubSpot, I was, yes, VP of sales strategy and ops, but I felt as though I was running sales for a good portion of that. And even, co-leading it with Hunter, of course I reported to Hunter, but then when Hunter left, I truly did co-lead it with G2 and David Neal. And, that experience, being part of the executive team, reporting into Brian Hoppligan, our CEO, that experience really gave me the jumping off point for a CRO role. The ops experience especially though, because really I had a chance to, maybe there's a lot of the P&L and own a lot of the decision-making, if you will. Obviously, I did that in conjunction with Brian Hoppligan and Hunter and David and G2 and all. But there was really some key big strategic decisions we were making at the time that, I was kind of front and center on, and I would often bring that recommendation forward. It's what we do. So those are the types of things that CROs get to do, is make big decisions, drive strategy, take bold steps forward. Sometimes those are right, sometimes they're not. But when they're not yet, be willing to roll them back and try something new, try something different. And again, the almost 6 years that I had at HubSpot, I think really was a great jumping off point to go and step into a CRO role. And just to elaborate on that, I took this, at one point, towards the end of my time at HubSpot, I decided it was time to move on. I wanted to go into a CRO role. And I remember joining this class that they were teaching how to be a CRO. And I started listening in, and I ended up teaching the back half of the class because the content was so natural for me that the person who was teaching it ended up deferring to me and asking me questions the entire time that I was in there. And I ended up dropping class by the end because I'm literally teaching this class, not learning anything from class, which is a bit of an aha moment to me as well. So I think I'm ready to take that stuff.
Yeah, that's so funny. The student becoming the teacher. So it seemed like it was just a natural progression for you in your career to go from strategy leadership into more head of revenue. It seemed to be just a natural progression for you at that point in time.
Yeah, exactly. Because of course I had sales leadership experience prior to HubSpot, and even while at HubSpot, I felt very much at times like I was helping to lead sales. I had a chance to interact with folks like yourself and the rest of the sales team and sales leadership team and all that. But of course, I have that more operational mindset, which is something as you look now at the CRO role, I do think it's becoming more and more, I think, critical to have an operational mindset in that CRO role nowadays, because it's a little bit less grow at all stakes now more or less grow efficiently. And how do you grow efficiently? Well, you need to look at data and do analysis to figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'd love to dig into that part because I think that's very relevant for a lot of the listeners around the kind of growth at all costs in terms of thinking about that shift in mindset. Obviously capital's harder to come by. It's dried up. Interest rates are a lot higher than they used to be. How did that, you've gone through this, over the last, sort of 5 to 6 years through these transitions through different roles in different companies. How did that shift in mindset change your behaviors and sort of your strategy and everything that you were doing from a leadership perspective?
So, I think I've always operated that way. And I think where I think I've always operated with this idea of how do we create efficiency and growth. And it's just the way I kind of look at things and think about things. And I think the one slight difference over the past year plus has been how do you create efficiency without putting a lot of investment in to drive that efficiency. I think in the past years, you can make big investments to drive efficiency and wait longer period of time to see that play out. Now it's a little more, you need to be time sensitive to experiments and to things you want to try differently. One great example of this is when we looked at HubSpot, we created the ISC program, the Inbound Solution Consultants. And then, as you know, but for everyone else's sake, what they would handle is all our chat, our online chat. And these were non-customer chats. So this would either be on the website or free for users, or using free products. And they set in sales in accordance to me. So these folks, the intention was they would teach someone how to use the product or answer questions before they'd sign up, and then drive them to either convert and buy online or drive them to have a conversation sales and thus sell from sales. So they were kind of a form of a BDR. So we grabbed a bunch of BDR headcount and moved it over into this ISC program and we tested it out. The first 3 months, it really didn't work. It was like slow going. We were trying a bunch of different things, and I was working with Brian Halligan closely on this. And we both were advocates for it, but we needed to let it play out over time. We need to figure out the motion. We need to work closely with product to ensure that the product motion was lining up with the way the ISCs and chat was like. Where was chat showing up on the screen, and how did it work, and so on. So it took us probably a good 6 months to see it really begin to work, and then gradually thereafter it took off. But nowadays, I don't think we could have had that same runway of time because, again, it was a pretty heavy headcount investment to try to see if that was going to work initially. And nowadays, I think we'd have to probably do a slightly smaller investment and be a little bit tighter on the budget when we test something like that out.
Yeah, it's a really great example. Do you mind talking to potentially how leaders and founders could leverage technology to, you spoke about the concept of scale. Obviously putting on headcount is not the best way to scale a business. If you're thinking about cash burn and, and investment, et cetera, how have you used, or how can businesses leverage technology to drive scale within the operations?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple different ways of doing it. And I think I would look at it through probably 3 different lenses. Data, let's just start with data, because from a RevOps perspective, I always love to do that. It's where are we seeing inefficiencies? So the data is going to tell us that. So let's look at our data and find those pockets of inefficiencies. And that inefficiency could be BDR or SDR, whatever you want to call it, the kind of outbound oriented team. Are they creating enough pipeline that's converting at enough rate? And that's one area. If you're ever investing in those headcount, what's that return on investment? So you can look at everything through that ROI lens. Are your AEs generating enough closed business across the world? Or are there certain regions where maybe they're not as effective, but the cost to hire them is still very high? Those are little areas where there's potentials for inefficiency, for example, plenty of others to look at. That's one opportunity. Another one is process. So I think as you look at process, you can say, where are we inefficient in our process? Where do we have overlapping processes? For example, are the CSMs and the onboarding team overlapping and doing the same thing? And do we have multiple people on calls with customers at the same time? Is that needed? Can we have one person on this call and the other person just learns the information through data capture in CRM or something like that? Those are overlapping processes. Again, you can go back to the sales motion. The salesperson doing a demo with the solution engineer on a call at the same time. You don't necessarily need both of them on a call, possibly. Can you reduce overlap? So that's the second one I would look closely at. And then the third one is technology. And there's some great technology out there right now that's not being utilized. And anything from how do you leverage ChatGPT, let's just say, everyone wants to think about that, but more simple things of, do I have, is our CRM being used properly? Do I have the right data sets for outbounding for my outbound oriented sales team? Or should we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator or not? Should we use Zoom Info? These are more, these don't work in all parts of the world, but again, these are great products. But again, I think Zoom Info is a good example of this. You have Zoom Info sitting with all of your sales reps around the world. I don't know if I'd say that that's the best use of dollars, because Zoom Info is much better in the US, not as good outside of the US and Europe and Australia and others. So again, I would look closely at that technology and say, let's be efficient with that technology spend, but also let's not be afraid to invest in really good products. Let's continue to test those out, because you might be able to hire less BDRs if you invest in a product like 6sense, let's say, or certain other products or certain other data sets. So I would just be very aggressive at looking closely at technology and avoid the overlaps, but also that doesn't mean de-invest in technology. It just means be efficient in where do you see the opportunities for technology investments.
Yeah, you've raised some great points there. I love how you've kind of broken it down into those different categories or buckets, so to speak. Obviously, you sort of referenced ChatGPT, and AI is everywhere, and everyone wants to use more of it. I think there's a bit of this unknown about how to really leverage it within the tech stack and across the revenue operations. Have you come across any examples of companies that you've advised or worked for or seen recently that are really using AI effectively in their day-to-day?
Yeah, I think people are still trying to figure it out. Overall, I've seen ChatGPT being used, I think, in a pretty good way through BDRs. I've seen this in a couple companies now. It's simple, but it makes a lot of sense, and that's probably the best use case that I've seen so far. There's obviously a lot of products that have AI co-pilots or AI products, built into them. Those are nice to have. It seems like nowadays, actually, it's kind of a must-have, and they have some sort of AI co-pilot built into it. But for ChatGPT, I think that the best use case that I've seen is using it to help you write good emails. So what I would recommend on ChatGPT is use it, go through multiple iterations with it. I think sometimes people just go in, put a prompt in, and copy paste, maybe tweak a word or two, and hit send. Refine. Put it in there, put what you want in, let it spit out a result. Say, actually write this in a different format, or write this way, write this that way. Just have it do it a couple times, kind of continue to clean it up for you. And also ask it to research for you. Say, I'm trying to get in touch with, this person who does this type of thing. What's the best angle to do that? It's a great way just to bounce ideas off. So you can help write your emails, but then also you can ask it some basic questions saying, again, here's the type of person I'm looking for. What would you recommend? Or this person specifically, and then be able to how I can get in touch with this person. Very tactical use cases like that are great. And again, opening the doors through BDRs or AEs using it in that sort of form, I think is just a great use case.
Yeah, I find the research piece particularly helpful in terms of using it as an assistant to go out and gather a bunch of information, synthesize, break things down, summarize into dot points. So I think that is super helpful. And then I think from a BDR perspective, potentially like newer reps to the funnel that may not have, a wealth of business acumen, that haven't been in sales for 5-10 years, using that as a way of understanding the personas and the people that you sell into, the problems they have, and kind of how to contextualize that to write the right kind of messaging or use the right messaging at the right time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, awesome. I guess reflecting back on your time at HubSpot, you did contribute pretty heavily to the growth of the company, and you touched on some things before, but I guess thinking back on it, like what were the factors that you think enabled such remarkable growth over the period of time that you were there?
I think it was one of them at least, was our willingness to try new things, willingness to kind of experiment, try new things, and be willing to fail when we try those new things. Now, one specific example that jumps out to me was the customer growth sessions, the CGS role. And this is for those who are at HubSpot, during this time, you may remember this, but we explored this idea of having a customer growth specialist. So the sales team has sales, and traditionally sales would sell new business and sell into the customer base. We said, let's try to have new business sales and customer sales. It worked fine, but we got some kind of negative feedback from our customers actually in doing it. And they just didn't like the touch points and the handoffs that happened. So we ended up rolling it back. With the short answer, we can dig in more in the wide. But we rolled it back, and it was great to see that we could test it out. We tried it, and we went pretty aggressively into it and rolled it back. there's plenty of other examples like that worked really well. We wanted to test something, we experimented and we saw some really positive results from it. But I think we were constantly looking to innovate in sales. And obviously the product was growing, innovating, but also from a sales work standpoint, rolling out the solution, the inbound solution consultants, doing different things with territory management and territory coverage that we did, and specifically in the US and then especially everywhere. We were constantly trying new things and pushing the boundaries on what we could and couldn't do. And I think that allowed us just to consistently have a leg out. That was probably one of the biggest factors. The other one I could think is our ability to retain top talent. And it's very expensive for a business to lose top salespeople, because to regain or retrain someone to get to that level, it takes a long, long time. I've seen this really everywhere I've been. There's this two plateaus, I might call it, in terms of a ramp. There's the first ramp here, and you might have your sales rep ramp at 6 months, let's call it, 3 months, whatever it is. But then there's another plateau, so that people kind of get through that 6 month ramp and they kind of begin to plateau, but then they actually continue to perform better over periods of time. And then eventually they hit this higher plateau. And at HubSpot, that higher plateau was about 18 months actually. And I did a whole analysis on this. So once you hit about 18 to 24 months-ish, you really hit a true plateau. But again, you'd already ramped. The ramp was maybe 6 months long. So it was this kind of hidden ramp that would occur. And those top performing reps were in seat for 2+ years. And they were the ones always achieving 130% of the goals, always going to P Club. We had to kind of get to that threshold to get there. And it's because they really understood the industry in and out. So we were able to keep those folks happy and keep them around. And they were the ones really driving overall performance as well.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. I mean, I've been at HubSpot for 8 years now, and I feel like it definitely took me a good couple of years before I really found my feet and started to hit my strides. And it's definitely true what you say around the expense and the cost to a business of losing top performers and people that have been around for a long time. Do you mind speaking to some of the things that you were thinking about or actions you were taking from a leadership perspective to think about retention and attrition of staff?
Yeah, so one of the things that we did really well, we gave out equity for performance, and a lot of businesses don't do this. So with your top performing rep, and you promote, you move up, or you get to President's Club or something, we have different thresholds where you earn equity, and that equity, of course, we have an advantage being a public company that equity was real cash, and you can exercise right away. It was RSUs, and you could see that cash in your bank account. But at the same time, just having that equity meant more ownership in the business, and the business would be successful. Your equity would become more. So I think that was a really nice alignment. Number one. Number two is I'm a big fan of this, and this I take 100% from hunters who may have got it from Mark Roberge and others even, but it is success breeds success. So the way we built our comp plans, our quotas were frankly very low. I mean, we would sometimes have quota roll-ups sit below the company number, which is just unheard of when you go and talk to SG&A and finance teams. But it meant we had to assume rep overperformance, and we knew the reps were going to overperform. And but that was a big assumption. That was a big risk that we would take. But in doing that, we set our reps up for success. So when they were hitting 105, 110%, they felt successful. They felt that they could continue to be successful, and kept folks around like yourself for long periods of time. So it was really tricky to do that and convince people that was the right thing every year to set ourselves up for a little bit of risk. But by doing it, I think it really did pay off in the long term. It's like that risk to reward ratio, right? It does seem like, thinking back on it in hindsight, does seem to be a pretty big risk to be taking, not setting that rep roll up to be, well above what the company street quota was. So it's a pretty big risk to take, but it sounds like it definitely paid off. Yeah, it did. And I think, what I would probably recommend to others is I don't know that I would go and set the quota below the company number. As I've taken other roles, I've set something above, but I wouldn't set it 130%. And that's what a lot of companies do. They'll set that quota at 120, 130%, which means you're just setting your reps up for 80% attainment. And I'd much rather set it at 103%, 105%, kind of like right there, maybe a little bit over, giving myself a little buffer just in case, but really right kind of in line with that company number. And that's even still a little risky, but I think it's much better because, once again, the reps are going to be successful and the company's successful. You're kind of nicely in line, all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, so true. Cool. I guess thinking about your expertise and sort of history in go-to-market and leadership, from that perspective, can you think about any potential blind spots that you've identified or thought about, that others may be able to learn from and shine a light on? So anything that was unknown at the time that sort of looking back on, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna let that happen again.
Yeah, I would say the importance of culture and understanding what that means for you personally. So, I think I've made some bad decisions from a culture standpoint in terms of job, and I'll get into which ones those are. But, and I look at the ones that have really worked out well, and that's where company culture aligned with my desire for a good company culture. And so every company can have their own culture, so that's okay. And they can all call it a good culture. That doesn't mean that it aligns to what you or what I might think of as a good culture. So I think it's really important to understand, what does that mean when someone says, we have a great culture? Well, what does culture mean for you? And really defining that clearly so that you can hear, what are they saying? Does that match to what you think of as a good company culture? Because everyone's got a different perspective on the definition of good in that case. And I think that's one of my kind of ahas that I've seen is I've missed that once or twice. And those are the stints that usually haven't lasted as long. But again, where I've stayed longer has been the spots where it's very clear that we've got great cultural alignment. And for us, thrive, that's really good. And in fact, we've been able to be very successful in those roles as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really, really good point. I think that alignment and cultural fit is so important, and something that people talk a lot about. And a lot of companies do have culture codes, things that they talk about publicly, and sometimes the culture doesn't match up with what it says on paper with what it's like in reality. Is there anything that someone could do, or any advice you would give to someone when potentially looking to join a new company, to really get a feel for whether or not this is what it is and what it says on the tin?
Yeah. I mean, I just like often at the leadership level, there'll be back channel references. When I hire people, I do a back channel reference. And what that might mean is, if I'm going to hire you, Karen, for a role, I might go and try to find someone who we both might know. I'll ask them, maybe they'd refer them to me, but I'll go and ask them about you at the back channel reference. I would, as a employee or soon to be employee, I would do the exact same thing, do back channel references. And those can go both directions. So go find someone at the business who or someone who's left the business. That's even better often. And ask them why. Why did they leave? What's it like? To be careful. One perspective doesn't mean every perspective. That doesn't really necessarily mean the whole view on the company. But if you can do a few of those, you can get a good feel for what's going on. And people leave for a whole variety of reasons, but usually you can get a pretty good understanding either from someone who's there or someone who's left, or a combination of both, on the culture. And I found that to be extremely helpful.
Yeah, there's nothing better than speaking to someone that's currently at the company that has no bias or no real agenda in terms of how they respond to that question, right? Switching gears a bit, I guess, from a personal perspective, sort of thinking back on when you were younger, and let's imagine if we could potentially time travel and sit down and you could have a conversation with yourself at the age of 21. What advice or words of wisdom would you give yourself at that point in time?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty easy for me because I was 21, graduating college. I thought I wanted to get a consultant, and I thought that was the way to solve problems and get exposure to the world and do anything else. I should have gone straight into sales. In fact, I did a couple of years later, but I didn't think I wanted to do sales at all. I didn't think that was my thing. So I would definitely have encouraged myself to look closer at sales and technology, obviously specifically, just because I enjoy technology. But I think it's so valuable to have that sales experience. You don't really know what you want to do long-term in your fight, and you just have to figure things out. But usually you have some understanding, are you ambitious or not? And if you're ambitious, you're going to want to take on a senior role in the company at some point. If you take on a senior role, you're going to need to understand sales, hands down. At some point, you're always selling something. CEOs are the head salespeople, heads of product need to sell. CFOs are selling to their investors, and lots of senior roles, sales is so critical. So I think it is a really nice role to have on your resume in your experience. Number two, the second thing is life's long, as well as it's short, but it is long. There's lots of your career out there, and don't worry about taking on the first perfect role out there, and that being kind of the key to success in your life. Try some things out, when you're younger, and some things are going to work, some things won't. That's okay. But definitely don't feel like, your first job or two has to be the job that dictates your life and your career. So those are probably the two things that I'll speak to myself or anyone else right now as that itch.
Awesome. That's great advice. Thank you. I definitely agree with the first point and the second point, but mainly from my experience, having never thought that I was going to be in sales. If I go back 10 years ago, I came from a history in town planning, and I never in my wildest dreams imagined being in sales and making a career out of it. But I think, kind of reflecting back on some of the soft skills and things that's helped me to build are really valuable outside of work, like the ability to actively listen, to really pay attention to what the person is talking about, to ask deep, thoughtful questions, to be a problem solver, to have the tenacity, all those kind of things. I think sales definitely helps you to develop, which I definitely think are great skills for anyone to have in life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great point, Jeremy, you make. You can develop these skills, and a lot of people, anyone can develop the skills. It's just like a muscle. You have to build that muscle up, you have to work on it. But there's skills that can be developed over time.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. I'm keen to kind of jump back a bit more into the business side of things. What do you think are some of the kind of unconventional or overlooked aspects of scaling a business that you believe that more leaders should be paying attention to?
I think right now, as we talked about earlier, the focus is a lot on operational efficiency. There's a balance in there that I think is really important between growth and efficiency. And in finding that balance, people are the most important thing. You have to, build a good company is based on building it around people. So I would encourage probably leaders to continue to focus on your people. And if you're trying to find ways to cut costs or be more efficient, that's okay. But I wouldn't do that at the expense of losing good talent and good people. And, it's often said a good developer is worth 10 not so good developers. And I think the same thing goes for a good salesperson, a good manager, a good leader. If you have those good people, you need to nourish them and cherish them and take care of them. And they will pay off, tenfold into the future. So that's probably the one area, with the efficiency focus out there, just be cautious on not losing top talent and again, really even paying up for that top talent, because it'll help in the long run to make the business more efficient overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the people are the lifeblood of the business. If you don't have them, then, like you can have the best technology and the best go-to-market strategy in the world, but if you don't have the right people in the right seats to execute, then, it's all going to eventually maybe fall apart.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of that, around sort of nurturing those relationships and holding on to people, we spoke about some things before around RSUs, etc. What are the things that you found helpful in terms of potentially either leaders that you've reported to or people that have reported to you, how to really foster those long-term relationships?
So I think I'll take two nails on that. I think for people who report to me, one of the things I really like to do is understand what are their long-term aspirations. And it's a bit of career, but also life aspirations. What gets you up every day? Why do you come to work? What motivates you? That sort of a discussion, I think, is really important, because if I can't understand your personal motivators, then I'm not going to be able to get the most out of you in your job. And it makes the day-to-day of the job that much more fun, actually, if we're both kind of aligned on why we're doing things. I've got my personal reasons, and you or others may have their own, and they're all going to be a little bit different. But I think it's really important to understand those and to share those as well. So if I know that your personal motivators align around buying a home or buying a second home, great, that's financial oriented. Okay, so let's try to do what we can to get you there. Or it could be different. It could be you really just want to become a CRO. Great. Let's see what we can get you there. But the path to doing those things are going to be different paths. The path to going down CRO thing might be very different than saying, how much money can I make so I can buy this second home or this home that I want? But again, knowing those things, we can build a plan to go down that path then. And I can help direct you down that path. And day-to-day of what we do every day will align to that plan and that longer-term goal. So conversely, when I think of how I manage up, I think it's very important for me also to express to my managers, my leaders, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And then also just over communicating is the other factor, in the sense as I look at, I report into the CEO of the past couple companies and I work with those CEOs. I think communication and being able to communicate in free way is so important. So, that's something that I look for. I look to try to do as effectively as possible. And it goes beyond just the why. For me, it's more or less just making sure we're aligned and making sure there's no surprises in what I'm doing or what he or she's doing as the CEO or moving forward.
Great advice. Yeah, I think that alignment piece that you spoke about from a personal perspective to understand truly what motivates that individual helps you to, kind of steer them down the right path, get the most out of them, support them through that journey.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nice. Last question for you. Always try to end things with some sort of actionable advice that people can take away. For the founders and go-to-market leaders that are tuned into the show, would you mind giving us, say, like 2 to 3 pieces of actionable advice that that these people can take if they're looking to really scale up their operations?
Yeah, so I think this one depends on probably where they are in their journey and in that business journey. Let's start kind of early stage, if you will. So I think early stage, when you think about scaling up operations, early stage, you need to make sure you've got a good data foundation. That's really critical. So that could be as simple as making sure you have a CRM system that's working that you can pull data out of. It could be as simple as having a data lake where there's multiple tools feeding into that data lake, and you've got a lightweight BI or some sort of BI tool sitting on top of that data lake. But you need to have data that you can make decisions off of. So you need to have data accessible. You need to have someone who can help kind of pull that data. Again, depending on the complexity of your systems, that person might need to be sophisticated or might not need to be all that technically sophisticated. But that's kind of number one, I'd say. Number two, so as we kind of go a little later stage, I would definitely encourage people, as you think of RevOps specifically, it's not just the systems. It's very much analyzing the data and making decisions based off of the data. So we know data is now our foundation. Then we have to have at least a person, if not a bit of a team that can look at that data, provide insights from that data, and then get the foresight of the way I think about it. So data gives you hindsight, and you can look at what happened, but I want analysts and people who can create insight into why it's happening and foresight into what's going to happen next. So again, building that team, that team, I can create that insight and foresight. That's really critical, really important. And now I'd say the last one, as we get more and more sophisticated here, is staying close to the sellers, the customer success team, just really building a RevOps function that understands the day-to-day, what's working, what's not within the sales team, within the customer success team. So as you build up a RevOps function, and there's different pillars ultimately within that RevOps function, and one of those pillars is strategy and analytics. That strategy and analytics team needs to be very close to the sales team and the customer success team. They need to be possibly sitting in their regular meetings and talking to them on a regular basis, so they understand what to be looking for within the data and how to bring those deep insights as well. So those are kind of maybe 3 different areas depending on level of sophistication of the business.
That's perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it makes a ton of sense when you think about the maturity, and obviously every business is at a different sort of part of that curve. But yeah, some really great actionable advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Well, my pleasure. Well, thanks for having me.
Perfect. Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Channing. And if people do want to follow you or connect, is there a best way for them to look you up?
Yeah, I can definitely check me out on LinkedIn. They can look me up, just Channing Ferrer on LinkedIn. I'm sure you can find not so many Channing Ferrers out there. Take a follow. I tend to try to publish stuff once a week, a variety of different things, but I try to put some insights out there on LinkedIn. So that's the best bet.
Amazing. Thanks again, Channing. Really appreciate it.
Definitely my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Growth Unlocked Beyond Scale. If you enjoyed the show, it would really be appreciated if you can leave a 5-star review wherever you consume your podcasts. And while you're there, why not subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future episodes? If you'd like to learn about how to drive profitable scale in your business, gain clarity on your direction, and improve your business valuation, click the link in the show notes to connect with Kieran.